Guys, we're here with Kevin Davey, the head brewer, brewmaster. Which are you, Kevin?
Nah, I don't care.
One or the other. And Quin Tinling, and we're here at Wayfinder Brewing, figuring out the secrets of what makes Wayfinder so incredible.
Oh, thank you.
What are the secrets, Kevin?
Well, one of the things that we do is we do decoction mashing, not just old school German style decoction mashing, but we also do rice decoctions, like on our Relapse IPA.
So that's what you're doing today is Relapse IPA, and talk about Relapse IPA.
I got the idea to do this kind of thinking about how big beer is made, wondering if we can take some of the trade secrets that they do and apply it to craft brewing. And when I talk about big beer, I'm talking about like Budweiser and Miller and stuff like this, using a rice instead of just all malt to try to lighten the body.
But now, don't they get criticized for adding things like rice?
Yeah, that's what makes it so crazy that I'm doing it. What we're using here is a flaked rice. It's actually like rice flour that's been pre-gelatinized a bit, but we're gonna go ahead and break it down even further.
Tell us what we're going to see today.
What you're going to see is a rice decoction. So right now we're mashing the rice to break down we're doing what's called a gelatinization rest. So we're going to gelatinize the rice, and then we're going to boil it for 30 minutes. We're going to mash our main mash in, and then the enzymes in the barley, when we mix the rice with the barley, are going to break down the rice sugars and the barley sugars and make a nice clean dry beer. So our approach to this is to try to do something very, very clean and very dry in a traditional approach instead of just using pure sugar.
What goes on in here, Quinn?
This is our mill room.
Your mill room.
Yes, sir. This is where we store our grain for our upcoming batches. And then we take out what we need for our recipe and then we mill it.
And it goes into that mill machine right there, and then up this tube into the mash tun?
Yes, sir. It goes through this hopper and then through this auger, and then it goes all the way up to our mash tun over there.
So explain decoction.
Yeah, so decoction it's an old way of making beer, pretty much before thermometers were prevalent. People knew the temperature of water, they knew the temperature of boiling water, but the optimum temperature for the enzymes to break down the starches into simple sugars and barley and other things is somewhere in between. And so through trial and error, brewers found that if they took like, say, 25% of the mash out, that's the ground up grain and the water, boiled it in a separate container and then added it back, and did that a few times, they would actually be able to break down the mash easier and make more fermentable beer. The reason being you're hitting those temperatures in between. But by boiling it, you're doing a lot of other things. You're solubilizing pretty much everything in the barley kernel, you're destroying some of the enzymes, you're caramelizing some of the sugars that are present in there, and it adds a certain amount of flavor. So that's kind of what we're trying to emulate with most of our decoction style beers.
What do we got going on here?
This is, we're transferring from the regular mash tun to the decoction tun. We're gonna raise the temperature in this vessel for a gelatinization rest, and then we're going to boil it.
Is it rare that breweries do decoction?
Yeah.
And how come, and why do you do it?
Well, it's energy and time and labor intensive. We do it because we think it lends a certain amount of flavor, it lends a certain amount of fermentability. We're trying to do some traditional approaches to making beer and try to build flavor in ways that are not just recipe driven.
So what are people gonna end up tasting in a Relapse IPA?
Well, the whole idea is that we're trying to make a palate for the hops more than anything. I'm trying to get away from caramely flavors. We're using a very clean yeast to ferment the beer. We're calling this a cold IPA just because we dry hop it cold, we cold ferment it, and the idea here is to use some more like, when you think about cold, you think of refreshing, and it's more of the refreshing style IPA.